Making Maths Child's Play. 7 simple steps for supporting your child to solve maths word problems.
So before you start, I just want to say stop. It's important to remember that you're not a teacher and nobody expects you to be. Next, I want you to remember that this isn't homeschooling. Homeschooling is generally a conscious choice that's made by a family voluntarily, and it's something they choose to go into with their eyes opened. However, what you're actually doing is supporting your child's learning at home during a global pandemic, which, my friend, is a whole other ballgame and probably looks a little bit like this. This isn't the ideal homeschooling environment. This is what we're working with just now due to the situation that we're in. So please cut yourself a little bit of slack.
When Strathclyde asked me to do this video, the first thing I did was I had to think back over the last year of home learning and some of the things that my friends, who are also parents, had been asking me. And there was one that I found that actually aligned with a struggle that I had had as a teacher and that I felt that I could help them with. So I was thinking as well that if it's something that affects them, then potentially it affects you as well. And that is the problem of word problems in maths.
Now, I can't turn you into a teacher in the space of one video, thank goodness really, or I'd be out of a job. However, I can arm you with a few tips and tricks that just might help you to feel more empowered to support your child's learning. So grab a coffee or a cup of tea and buckle up. Let's go. Maths word problems. I don't get this. In my classroom, we are not allowed to say, I don't get this. There's a banner on my wall that says, if you don't understand, ask a question. I don't get this isn't a question. And this is really just to encourage children to stop, look, think, and see if they can formulate a response to what their problem is. Well, as it turns out, I had to do the same. Because when it came to problem solving, some children in my class were indeed not getting it. And I found that this was a common issue that was faced by many teachers. So I dug a little deeper and I discovered that there were some simple steps I could take to help support my little learners when it came to maths word problems. But what exactly is the problem with problems? Any child can be taught to follow a procedure to complete what we might call a page of sums or calculations. However, learners need to understand the concepts behind what they're doing too. There's no point knowing how to complete a page of sums if you don't understand what it really means to add or subtract or to divide or to multiply. The children need a conceptual understanding. You can't have one without the other because it just doesn't work. And also, it really helps if you can make it fun and hands-on. So what I realised was that children need a strategy for success. So let's give them and you a step-by-step plan to tackle those maths word problems and build their confidence too. At the end of this video, I'll also provide a link to a fun free resource to help you engage your children in solving and creating maths word problems at home. This will really help to develop their learning and their understanding of maths problems, as formulating a problem can be just as tricky, if not more so, than solving one. So here are my 7 key steps to solving word problems. First of all, I always say to the children, stay calm. Read the problem. Not just once, read it twice. Sarah has a jar with 18 sweets in it. Half of the sweets are strawberry flavour and half are orange flavour. Sarah eats 9 of the sweets and gives 4 to her friend Jo the next day. How many sweets does Sarah have left? Immediately, many children will look at this word problem and panic and switch off. There are other children who will just fly, who look at the question and just naturally know how to solve it. But for most children, that's not the case. This is something that needs to be taught. So my first tip is stay calm and read it. Once you've read it, it's probably good to read it again. Next, I want you to keep calm and think about it. What I want you to think about is exactly what it is that the question is asking you. Taking everything else away, what is it that the question wants to know? So encourage the child to look and just tell you, without any numbers or any answers, what exactly is it that the problem wants to know? Well, in this case, Quite simply, the problem wants to know, after all is said and done, how many sweets does Sarah have left? So let's hold on to that as we move forward. Now I want you to be brave and bin the trash. You might not know what that means, but I'll let you into a secret. Sometimes teachers and other people who write these word problems put in lots of extra information that you don't really need. This is to trip you up and challenge you. Can you work out what information you need and what information you don't in order to solve this problem? So that's the next step. Look at the problem and work out what kind of information really doesn't matter in the context of how many sweets Sarah has left. Well, it really doesn't matter that half of the sweets are strawberry flavour or that half are orange flavour, because it's all about how many we had and how many we were left with. And it really doesn't matter that she gave the sweets to Joe the next day. All that matters is that she did. So let's take that stuff out. Suddenly what we're left with seems a whole lot more manageable. It seems now to have a start, a middle, which is your problem, and an ending, which is what you need to work out. So the next thing I would ask your child to do is to say, well, what do you know here? So the way to do this would be to go through and highlight key numbers, key words that are in the sentence. So for example, a jar with 18 sweets eats 9 and gives 4. These are the key bits of information. Now you might find at this point that some children fly with it. They understand now what to do and they can go and make the calculation. However, there are other children that still aren't entirely sure, and that's okay. They just haven't learned yet how to construct an answer to this type of problem. So what we need to do is help them to break it down and visualise exactly what the problem is. However, what I would say is that all children will benefit from the next step, even if they do automatically know the answer to this question. And that's because using this strategy will help you when the numbers get higher and the calculations and the word problems get trickier and more steps appear in the word problem. So I would always encourage you to get your child to work through these steps and show they're working as they go. So what I want you to do is to get creative, and by that I mean make it or draw it. So is there a way that you can make or draw this word problem? When we're teaching mathematics, we look at 3 key stages of learning. We begin in the early years with concrete materials. These are things that children can hold in their hands and move about. So for example, markers and counters. From there, we move on to what's called the pictorial, which is generally the same idea, but instead of being things that the children can move around, it's drawings and visual representations of the problem. Finally, we move on to what we call the abstract. This is where the child writes the calculation, or what we sometimes call the number sentence. But what I find is that sometimes we're too quick to move away from the concrete and the pictorial before the child has a full understanding of the 4 main operations: add, subtract, divide and multiply. And while this can be okay initially, we do find that it gives us problems down the line when it comes to these types of word problems. So take it all the way back and start with some concrete materials. No child is too old for these, and I've actually found that it can support learning all the way up through primary school to primary 7. Now, don't worry if you don't have fancy maths equipment at home. You don't need it. You could use dried pasta, you could use tiddlywink counters, or you could even use a handful of building blocks. It doesn't matter what it is, the child just has to be able to count it and move it around. Now my daughter is going to show you how she used these concrete materials to solve this problem. I'll then take you on and show you how you can develop this as you move from concrete to pictorial and into the abstract. Sarah has 18 sweets in a jar. Now I want you to think about how you could draw, like Sarah eats 9 of them. So what would you do if you wanted to draw it first of all?
One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Okay. So if you were to write a sum for that, if you were to write a math sentence, a number sentence, just writing it along the top there so that there's still space, what would you write for that? What did you just do?
It's 18 minus 9.
Okay, so write that along the top somewhere. That's it. So you did 18 minus 9 equals... Excellent, 9. Right, Sarah gives 4 to her friend Jo. So how would you draw that?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay. So if you were going to write a number sentence for this, what happened there? What
That is 9 minus 4 equals.
So how many sweets are left in the jar? 5. Do you want to use your counters to check it?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Fantastic. Well done.
But we're not finished there. Whether the answer was right or wrong, there are some other useful steps that we can use. So the next thing I want you to do, and this is a thing that I've found really enhances a child's learning and understanding, is to get them to share your thinking with you. So basically, just ask them to talk you through exactly what they did. Can they describe to you why and how they solved this problem? Not only does this help their learning, but as a teacher, I've discovered that listening to how children solve problems is a really useful way to understand how they learn too. And I've even had children teach me ways that I would never have thought of solving a problem. So I asked my daughter to share with me how she solved that problem in her own words. And this is what she said.
Okay, so she started with 18 sweets, but then she ate 9, so I took 9 away. That left 9. Then she gave 4 to Jo, so you just took those 4 away. That means she had 5 left.
This shows me that the child understood the question, and not only that, understood the process of what they did. But guess what? There's one final step to go. I want you to step back and let's check your answer. I don't mean go and look at the answer book and see if it was right or wrong. What I mean is that I want the child to take a moment to see if their answer might be reasonable. So does their answer make sense? Is there any way they could estimate a rough answer or maybe make some observations about what the answer might or might not be? Here were some suggestions that my daughter came up with for this problem. She knew that the answer would be less than 18 because there were 18 sweets to start with and some got eaten, so there's always going to be less than 18. She thought that the answer would be more than 0 because just by glancing at the numbers, she didn't think that what was eaten would add up to 18. However, she thought that most of them got eaten, and so there wouldn't be very many left. So with this in mind, we looked at the answer she had and we said, does your answer seem reasonable? Her answer was 5. Did it seem reasonable? Was it less than 18? Was it more than 0? And was it not very many that were left? I would say so, and that gives us some guidance that we are at least going in the right direction. What you want to do now is discuss the learning. Share your thoughts with your child on how you might have done it. There's no right or wrong answer, we all have different strategies. If they didn't quite get it, support them here to do it. Perhaps revisit the question and revisit the steps. Then, no matter what, celebrate. Celebrate the learning, celebrate the understanding, and celebrate any achievements that took place. This will give your child a boost of confidence that they need to move forward. I want to show you now how this strategy can be taken forward to support children further up the school. As I said before, I think we move away too quickly from the concrete and the pictorial into the abstract before being absolutely sure that the child has a solid understanding. But also I think we forget that sometimes these concrete and pictorial strategies can really help us to break down a problem. So let's imagine the numbers we were working with got a little bit bigger. Suddenly we've got 106 sweets in the jar. 61 were eaten and 22 were given away. Well, there's absolutely no way I'm about to count out 106 counters, taking 61 and then another 22 away. However, we can use the same pictorial format to represent that. We can have a jar, we can write 106 on it, and that helps us to visualise. Then we can visualise 61 being taken away.
And then we can visualise 22 being taken away. And when our children are struggling with which operation to use, should I add, subtract, multiply or divide? Seeing the problem presented visually like this can often help them to work out the answer. Also, just asking them to talk about what they see can help them come up with the keywords that they need. For example, there were 106 sweets in the jar. Sarah took 61 out. Took away, minus. She gave 22 to Joe. She gave away, she took away, minus. From here, your child can be working this into a number sentence like we did in the video. So for example, your child might come up with something like 106, take away the 61 is 45. There were 45 left. And then 45 take away 22 was 23. But even higher up the school than that, this can still come in useful. For example, if you wanted to teach algebra or order of operations, you could do something like this. You can look at the fact there are 106 sweets in the jar and that 61 and 22 were taken away. You could take the 61 and 22 and put it in brackets. And this can be used to teach the children how to calculate through order of operations. Tell the child, well, you start with what's in the brackets, and you can see that 61 and 22 were taken away. So 61 plus 22, work out the answer to that, remove the brackets, and take it from there. Suddenly you're left with 106 minus 83, and that's a whole lot easier to work out. We know it's 23. So this is just an example of how this kind of approach can be used further up the school, and a reason I think that we shouldn't rush to remove those concrete and pictorial resources from our learners too soon. I also think it's really worthwhile to encourage our learners to use those. We don't want this attitude of, I don't use those are for babies, because actually what I've shown you here hopefully proves that they can help all of us when we're working with maths problems. So there you have it. That's my 7 simple steps for supporting your child to solve maths word problems. Let's just recap. Read the problem twice. Think about it. What exactly is the problem asking you to do? Get rid of all the excess stuff that you don't really need. Look through. Ask yourself, what do you know? Are there any key words or numbers that you should take note of? Next, you want to make it or draw it so that you can solve it. Then you want to share your thinking. This helps to develop learning and share strategies and ideas. Finally, you should check your answer to make sure it makes sense, and then always celebrate. I've uploaded a file that I hope will be helpful for you and your child to practice answering and creating your own word problems at home. You can start with simple one-step problems and then build it up beyond that to 2 and 3 steps to solve a problem. The more fun you can make it for your child, the more they'll enjoy doing it and the less like work it will seem. Anyway, that's all from me. I really hope that this video has maybe helped you and your child a little bit with maths. And if you want to get in touch or ask anything, or if you have any questions and comments, you could get in touch with me via Twitter. My username is @MsMiller_LVPS. I would love to hear from you.